Uh, Namaskar, good evening, and welcome to all of you. So, I will start the session today by reading a few quotes on AI. So, let me start with one quote. AI is probably the most important thing humanity has ever worked on. I think it is something more profound than electricity or fire, says Sundar Pichai. There's another quote. Machine intelligence is the last invention that humanity will ever need to make, says Nick Bostrom. There are a few other quotes which are at the other end of the spectrum. The development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race, says Stephen Hawking. Mark my words, AI is more dangerous than nukes, says Elon Musk. He also says that with AI, we are summoning the demon. There are several opinions about AI. AI can make us smarter, more productive, more healthier, or it can make us more vulnerable or more redundant. To solve this mystery, we have today with us Satish Vishwanathan. Satish works as MD with Accenture. Satish has been with Accenture for about 5 years. Before that, he has spent about 13 years with IBM. He holds a BE and ME degree from BITS Pilani and MBA from Germany. Today's session is all about Ds. At one end, we have robots and co-pilots which are ready to take over jobs that are difficult, demeaning, demanding, dangerous, and dull. And at other end, we have intelligent humans like Satish who help us connect design, data, device, and domain to create value out of AI. I end my opening remarks with a quote from Satish's LinkedIn profile, and it reads, I prefer to stay comfortable outside the box to make us a little uncomfortable inside the box. Over to you, Satish.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Thank you. Good evening, all. I don't know if I'm standing in between you and dinner, but I'll try my best to stay away, right? So we're going to start off with a few context setting conversations. I have many reasons to be here. The main reason to be here is to engage with each of you in a two-way conversation. Because don't think of this as yet another lecture, right? I'll try to be a student or a participant as much as each of you. So maybe we'll start with a quick video, and then I'll set the context of why this video and then the story thereon. Yeah. And some of you in the room, if you have just been seeing the pre-recording or the pre-testing, just imagine that you're hearing it for the first time. Okay.
And Mr. Sullivan, what does your model say that means for us here?
If those assets decrease by just 25% and remain on our books, that loss would be greater than the current market capitalization of this entire company.
So, what you're telling me is that the music is about to stop, and we're going to be left holding the biggest bag of odorous excrement ever assembled in the history of capitalism.
Sir, I'm not sure that I would put it that way, but let me clarify, using your analogy, what this model shows is the music, so to speak, just slowing. If the music were to stop, as you put it, then this model wouldn't be even close to that scenario. It would be considerably worse.
Let me tell you something, Mr. Sullivan. Do you care to know why I'm in this chair with you all? I mean, why I earn the big bucks?
Yes.
I'm here for one reason and one reason alone. I'm here to guess what the music might do a week, a month, a year from now. That's it. Nothing more. And standing here tonight, I'm afraid that I don't hear a thing. Just silence.
So there is a certain context in which we are having this conversation today. This is a conversation happening in every university, in every business organization as we speak, right? There are two interesting characters, and this obviously most of you would have seen this movie. It's basically Margin Call, the movie about the 2008 financial crisis, and I mean maybe a bit dramatic, but essentially leaders had to take big decisions, especially when it goes against the grain of what they have been committed, right? So if you're sort of having to do something that is against your culture or against your, let's say, a business priority, obviously there's a lot of pushback. And the story goes that meeting happened in the middle of the night, I think 2:30 or 3 or something like that, right? So the other person, the other speaker of the video is the analyst, who unfortunately has to break the news that the data shows something which is fundamentally different from what the leadership has been believing. Okay, so these two characters or protagonists, right, invariably are part of this conversation that we're going to have today. So one is a business leader who wants to do something, might have ambitions, might have a big vision, and the other is this analyst, this protagonist who actually wants to be honest to what's happening in the organization, using data, using algorithms, models, and so on. So that's the preface on which we can start, right? Just a quick introduction about myself. Yeah, if you can go to the next one. So, yeah, one. Yeah. So as Dr. Aditya said, I've been in Accenture for 5 years. I'm a managing director focusing mainly on data and AI adoption. My industry of choice is travel, which pretty much means all of you are my consumers, right? We all travel. I also have been in the past doing some interesting roles, one of which is on innovation, on having digital-led ideas come to the fore. And that was part of the earlier group we used to have called Accenture Digital, right? And the other interesting thing I want to bring to the table is there is a very exciting partnership that Accenture has with MIT. It's called the MIT and Accenture Convergence Initiative. I don't know how many of you are aware, but you can Google it. It's a very, how do I say, comprehensive alliance we are having with MIT. And my role is I'm the program lead. So currently I'm driving a few tens of projects. I can't tell you the exact number, but a lot of projects with MIT on multiple aspects, including data and AI as a value play and as a research area, right? And before I actually joined Accenture, I had a different life. And the reason for putting this slide is because people don't believe or people don't imagine what all I have done, I could have done. So I think some of the areas I've consciously switched every 2 years. So data and AI, I've been there for almost a decade now. I got my data science certification in 2013, so it's been a decade. But there have been other areas I've been very passionate about: customer experience, automation, right? Middleware. All of these things in today's session will all come together. So that's the quick overview about myself, right? So we're going to start off with how did we get here, okay? I'm going to a little bit bore you with a little bit of history, and maybe some of you might be smart enough to answer some of these questions, but definitely let's see how we get there, right? So the first one is defining AI. So I think the basic definition of AI, the way it's been put out almost 60, 70 years back, is a machine can do an action if you describe the conditions under which that action has to be performed, okay? And this is actually a very, very deep definition. It's not just about saying a machine can do X or Y, right? It is about how is it that this specific action is described at a given point in time, okay? And that's where the complexity of data science, ML, AI, and now large language models, everything comes in, okay? So just keep this word described It will come repetitively in multiple ways as we proceed. Next one. Okay. So we're going to talk about CS. Any guesses in the context of data and AI? Okay. There is a very important, I wouldn't say if it's a name, a plane, a thing, a person, I don't know. But CS stands for probably the most important thing. Any guesses? Any wild guesses? It's not computer science. Let's just take the easy thing out. Okay. It's definitely not computer science. Okay. It's a person's name. Okay. So this person, we'll have a quick video about this person. This person is actually the father of information. Or, he has done so many things for us. Unfortunately or fortunately, we don't celebrate him as much as we should. Okay. He is from MIT. He is a student of MIT. Even his PhD thesis was a very acclaimed report at that time. And then he eventually became a faculty at MIT as well. So his name is Claude Shannon. Okay. Any of you have heard of him? Claude Shannon? Okay. Let's play a quick video. One more.
Who's Claude Shannon?
Who's Claude Shannon?
Claude Shannon? You're asking me this question?
We live in the information age, and Claude Shannon is the father of the information age.
In the last couple of years, we've generated more information than the sum of all of human history.
The fact that you can contact an Uber, place a phone call, text a friend, and then check your email, all of those things you owe to Claude Shannon and his work.
He's at the same level as Newton or Einstein.
Why don't people know about him? His impact is bigger than all of the household names.
To measure information, you have to look at it without meaning. Content is irrelevant. That upsets a lot of people. A coin toss is the simplest form of information. Heads or tails, a 1 or a 0, a binary choice. A bit.
And that was the revolution.
Back in the 1910s and 20s, he had what we would probably call now a free-range child, rigging up a barbed wire telegraph, learning wigwag signaling, sending Morse code flags.
Shannon lays this idea that machines could be made to think. He himself invents devices that mimic a brain. There's the mouse that can navigate a maze, the computer that can play a chess game.
My dad tried to fool with everything a little bit and see if he could make it more fun. He knew how to juggle, and he taught me how to juggle.
He was like an artist. He didn't sound like a scientist, not at all.
Who makes a flaming trumpet? A rocket-powered frisbee.
When Shannon's paper came out, it was like a bombshell, like Newton coming out with the laws of motion.
For a long time, people didn't really understand what this was all about.
Engineers thought it was so far removed from anything they could build, they just basically thought it was science fiction.
It took decades for people to find those codes that Shannon promised existed.
Everything that Shannon predicted back in 1948 came true.
Learning things, discovering things. He didn't lose that childlike curiosity and delight.
Practical or playful. He was into understanding.
What would the world look like if Claude Shannon hadn't done what he did?
So the fact that we're using something digital today, we owe it to him. Right. So looking at the fundamental building blocks of data and AI, I mean, if you just bat it to the grade 5 or grade 4 conversation for a moment, it's just these 6 components, right? You have a business problem. It could be a business problem. It could be a societal problem. It could be a planet problem. It's a problem, right? And then you're looking at, I need to solve it with data. Why do we need to solve it with data? Because people feel that my hypothesis or my instinct may not agree with Lakshman sir's instinct, right? So they say, let's just have data as a common way of making sure it is fair, whatever action we take. There's a model. Typically, the model is a white box. We'll talk about the white box a bit. There's an output, and there is a business decision made. And if you see that meeting that we had the video about, there was a decision made to offload all those mortgage securities. That was the decision happening in that specific meeting, right? And then there is a business outcome. So the essence of, abstracting it to this layer is to have a couple of exercises and have conversations and also make you think, where exactly will things go wrong? Okay. We always rely on the happy path. We got the best problem. We've got the best data scientists. We've got the best kind of decision and everybody's happy. It doesn't work that way, right? The world is not as cozy and nice as a piece of paper or a book, right? So we're going to have a couple of these intersections as we proceed. So just keep this abstract flow in mind. Okay. The first thing is, machine learning. I'm going to start with machine learning because I didn't want to start with descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive. I felt it was probably one of the courses you'd have done. I'm assuming you have. Do you have a data science course as part of your curriculum? Yeah. Yes, no? Yes. Good. So you obviously know this part. So I think the essence of what I'm starting is slightly higher. The machine learning aspect, why was there a need for a machine learning aspect? Why were we not happy with just describing a problem, trying to predict or trying to find a root cause of a problem, or for that matter, prescribe some few actions, hopefully somebody will listen to you, right? The reason we wanted to move from a technical perspective is we were not in a position to constantly monitor the machine to say, do this, don't do this, don't do this, and so on. It is just not scalable as a proposition. So we had to get the machine to start figuring out ways to learn. Okay, this is I'm talking about at least 60 to 40 years back. This is where all these concepts got, conceptualized. Then the next thing is, okay, even if the machine does want to, go about doing things, we set certain basic constraints. And you must have obviously read about unsupervised learning, supervised learning, reinforcement learning, et cetera, right? So the reason why we have human in the mix, okay, is because the machine is not as smart as we attribute it to be. And we will have a couple of examples of that as well, okay? So it's very important for us to have models in the right way, which align with what is the intended risk of that specific solution. So that is how these, let's say, principles and frameworks have been designed. Now, talking about investments, right? Now, we spoke about a little bit of the conceptual model. We spoke about how this adds up in terms of the technical part. And technical part, consciously, I've kept it down because I have a lot to cover on the business side, okay? So forgive me if you are expecting technical stories. No, previous, right? So in terms of private investment, what we are seeing a lot is focus on human health. That's becoming a fundamental area of investment for data and AI. And that is also very, very difficult for us. Just imagine a relative of ours, if they are, unfortunately in a situation and we have to rely on a machine with 60% probability of something good happening. We would never go for it, right? Even with a doctor these days, we have second opinion, third opinion, right? So the risk of having, big decisions taken by a machine or an algorithm in health is so emotional that we are not comfortable letting it to the machine. And that's why a lot of research is happening, okay? It's not because we have given up. We just believe that some proprietary aspects of data analysis can be done by the machine or the algorithm. The other thing I want to sort of quickly touch upon here is data management, okay? It's a very, very boring aspect of data science, but you will see in the next 20 minutes, that's probably the most happening part. And if some of you want to become billionaires, that's your startup idea, okay? If you can do something in this data management space, like Cloud Shannon, 78 years from now, they will put a video of yours, okay? More. Also, in terms of tasks, I think we spoke about, where investment is happening, but just in terms of an objective task, there are two dimensions in which you look at a task. The first one is, what is the environment in which this task is happening? Is it a very secure, clear, clarifiable, explainable environment? Or is it something that's very, very dramatic, very, very, uncertain environment? And the y-axis is it about recognizing the trends, or is it about reasoning? Okay. A lot of the good news in data science is the left bottom box, which is just a matter of recognizing trends and in a very, very safe environment. Spam filter, right? Nothing can go wrong in analyzing a spam filter. You just have to look at text, maybe some images, make a call. So training the model is very easy. But the moment you come to something like, I don't know, a personal robot. See, I think all of us have, Some of us may be married, some of us may not be. We all have too much expectation even from humans. Just imagine you have a personal robot. So how much expectation you will have? I want this, I want that. So these are the uncertain areas where you don't have the capability today to train, and bring people sort of use them. Now let's also look at where are people using AI. And AI is actually a term very loosely used. Please let me be very honest. There is analytics, there is machine learning, and then maybe a little bit of AI. Okay. And I think right now it's like everything is called AI in a very abused way. Sometimes it's very difficult to sort of look at. In fact, I was just looking at an interview of a certain investor company, and they said most of the companies that say that they're using AI actually use analytics. They don't, it's not AI. So they're just riding the wave, hoping that something miraculous would happen. Right. So here I think the main thing to understand is how we are focusing on B2C kind of scenarios. Okay. Customer service, extremely difficult for any organization to scale. Even as individuals, we would behave very differently today morning compared to yesterday morning, right? So how do you have a very dynamic way of handling customer service? Similar, there's one more on customer relationship management, very similar. Content production for marketing, extremely difficult for us to get the right kind of appeal, the choice of words, the coloring for you to make a decision to buy any product, right? So these are all the uncertain human behavioral areas where we are putting a lot of machines to sort of, uncover and figure out what we can do. Now, just again, very, very briefly, we touched upon multiple aspects, the technology, the fundamental building blocks, where the investment is happening, and also task-wise where AI or ML is mature, right? Now let's talk about business organizations. All of you, I'm hoping, will be a part of a big business organization. Maybe you might be creating your own business organization, right? So how do we compare maturity of these business organizations on data and AI? Okay, this was not even a topic a few years back, right? So just because of a lot of push of computing power. So one thing you have to realize that our computing power ability has actually dramatically changed the past 10 years. In fact, there are enough articles online which says that Moore's law has been exceeded. People don't necessarily even believe what Moore's law right now because we have crossed that phase of, increasing the number of transistors twice, in 2 years, right? So the whole point is with computing power increasing, the cost has gone down. So right now, whatever we can buy is actually much cheaper than what it was, let's say 3-4 years back. So a lot of organizations have started investing in AI infrastructure. Okay. And there's a lot of excess fat in that infrastructure as well. But with all of these parameters changing, we wanted to sort of have maturity analysis of different businesses so that we understand what is going right, what is not going right, what does it mean to be successful in this space, right? If you go next screen. So maybe I can go there because I can see it. So this specific AI maturity survey was done by Accenture last year. Okay. And the understanding was very, very, very clear. We wanted to evaluate two parameters. One is foundational capabilities, which means capabilities to just have a very proper, if you can say, data and AI right principles. And then how do we build it to a scalable model? Okay, so just imagine two, let's say, access foundational and actually differentiated capabilities. That was the original objective. And then we also realized when we're doing this analysis that when organizations are using data and AI, there is an inherent speed in which they're able to achieve certain results. Okay, and so we want to quantify what does that mean? Is it like 2 months faster? Is it like 4 months faster, right? So we actually have got a number, right? So there is actually a certain number of months you are saving if you actually invest in data and AI in specific processes. This again is a finding of ours. Next one. This is the most interesting chart, right? So this again, as business students or futuristic business leaders, you should actually look at what kind of an organization do you want to create? or what kind of organization do you want to join, depending upon how you look at value, right? So as I said, there is the AI foundation x-axis, AI differentiation on the y-axis. We see that most of the companies in 2023 are still in experimentation phase. Okay, it's very sad, but that's a reality, right? So we'll talk about why they are in experimentation phase. But fundamentally, what we're seeing is that when organizations take AI or data or ML as a investment priority or as a experimentation priority, they don't actually look at how to bring it to the mainstream. They're just looking at having a tick mark. I'm doing AI. I'm doing deep learning. So really go deep into it, you'll understand it's probably one small use case, 10 people doing it. But it will have a splash saying, my God, what kind of work we're doing, right? So a lot of this mirage is what we want to break with this kind of an analysis, with this kind of a benchmarking. So essentially, if you see almost 2/3 of the companies are actually still in experimentation phase, and this is across industries, by the way, it's not only about X or Y industry. And the top people who are AI achievers, it's just nothing, right? All these technologies have been sitting out here for many years, and at least since the past 20 years, we can say there's a lot of focus on data science. This number should have been at least 35, 36, if not one. I mean, 1/3 is a fair number, but we're still in 12%, right? And then the others are just hovering around. Either they've got very good in one area, they don't know how to sort of bring it across the enterprise, or they're still a little bit, unsure about both. Yeah. Yeah, so I just tell you, so this again is based on a definition, a technical definition behind. So AI, I mean, of course, they have said at least 10% revenue, but what they're looking at is AI foundation means, do you have investment in data management, data governance, building fundamental data products, okay, which can actually be useful for different business units in your organization? That's the space, okay? So it's like infrastructure it is. So I'll just tell you the layer cake is like this, right? You have the infrastructure at the bottom, which is pretty much hardware. Then you have the cloud layer. Then you have the data side, which is in some cases a platform on top of cloud, but fundamentally you're bringing different data sources together. That's the data layer. Then you have the data products layer, where you actually build these products. Okay, a simple example: you want to do an analysis of marketing, right? Customer churn, right? So you need to have these 4 layers. In some cases, these layers will be very expansive because the volume of data you're looking at is very huge. In other cases, you may not even realize that there are 4 layers because you'll think it's the same cloud, the same data platform, and so on, right? But fundamentally, there are 4 layers. So that is what we're talking about as AI foundation. And what we are looking at is saying that if we are having a foundation, we are looking at least 10% of revenue that is influenced by AI. Again, very, very difficult as a business leader to sort of say what kind of revenue is actually coming because I put $1 in an AI solution. Okay, so ROI models are very, very difficult in AI. So we are trying to crack that as businesses, and we're trying to crack that as research organizations as well. And differentiation, just to close the conversation, differentiation is actually about beyond data products. How do you bring, for example, responsible AI? How do you get people to use AI? Okay, if you see, I had earlier put a model, right? It said started from business problem and went to business outcome. In between, there is a step called business decision. Most organizations don't actually take the data input or the model, answers as valid because they're worried about the data. Okay, so in many organizations, what we see when we consult with them, we see they have data, but they are very worried about making decisions only because of data and AI, because they feel maybe 10% of that is incorrect. Okay, so that's the differentiation part. Okay, so just moving to the next one. Yeah, so this again is a view by industry. So depending on whichever is your sweet spot industry, you may want to think and see where you are not, right? But if you see, none of the industries have cracked. I mean, tech is just meant to be in that space anyway. So I would not count tech to be there, right? So none of the industries have actually even hit 60% beyond, other than tech, which is actually a serious challenge and a beautiful opportunity. Okay. And I think we will have the new kid on the block, LLM, we'll talk about the new kid on the block as well. So all these perceptions of AI maturity, AI adoption is going to significantly change with the GPT game coming in. Yeah, next one. Okay. So now what we also try to understand is who is a winner in this game. Yes, we are benchmarking 1,200 companies. Great. Who's a winner? There has to be some criteria, right? The winner is doing this, is not doing this, etc., etc. So we actually classified, as I said, these 4 groups: achievers, builders, innovators, experimenters. And we actually looked at 4 kinds of parameters: strategy and sponsorship, data and AI core, which is the question you asked, talent and culture, which is about how people are actually using data and AI. Most of the time they don't use, and responsible AI. Okay, responsible AI has actually become far more impactful and far more, I would say, vigorous as a topic in the past 5 years, especially after the Cambridge Analytica, the influence on US elections, etc. A lot more, interest has come in from the corporate side. Otherwise, it was just like an ad hoc incident here and there. But now there's a lot of institutional focus on how do we get that responsible AI right. Okay, but we'll come to this a little bit if you just go on to the next slide. Okay, so what are the 5 success factors, right? Before we go there, let me ask you a question. And this is a free for all. Anybody can raise their hand, right? There are 5 roles in an organization. I'm just going to give you 5. You're going to tell me whose responsibility is it to focus on data and AI strategy, according to you. Okay. The first is a CDO. Second is a CIO. Okay. Third is a CTO. Fourth could be, I don't know, Chief Experience Officer, not CEO, Chief Experience Officer. And the 5th is a CEO. Okay. CDO, CIO, CTO, Chief Experience Officer, CEO. According to you, whose responsibility should it be to focus on data and AI? Yeah. All. Why?
It should be a collective responsibility of an organization if they want to drive into AI. One person taking responsibility is not enough.
Not enough. Okay. Any other answers? Yes.
Because the problem is going to solve as a time and we have to implement the changes to move forward. It's important to have an alignment of all the stakeholders. So it makes more sense to have a collective responsibility rather than
okay, very interesting. Looks to be a very democratic group. Yes.
We have to answer just one option, and I believe it's the responsibility of the CEO to ensure that the data AI strategy is implemented, because these actually are the top level and it has to go down.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Anybody else? Okay, so the right answer is the CEO. See what has happened. I know that when we in the past 10 years, I've been working with so many different organizations, and usually data will come in the last topic, like, tomorrow is like the last day of school and you're talking about an important topic. How much will you focus, right? Like, when can I go for vacation, right? So there have been times when data and AI will be like the last thing because it's considered as a toy just to play with, right? And just see if something comes out. This is all I'm talking about, at least 12, 13 years back. From there on, we started coming together, having a focus saying CDO should be formed. CDO is not a role that was there forever. It will just come the past few years, right? And again, having a CDO is one aspect, but whom does the CDO report to is the problem. You can have a CDO on paper here. The CDO will go and give a lot of interviews, but if you go and ask him or her, what is your authority level, then they'll say it, right? So I think the bigger constraint is having a formal role, then having the reporting, having the kind of span of control, as you said, to make sure that you are not doing a transaction and calling it a success, right? And that's what we're going to cover next as well. So the CEO is obviously the most important. So fundamentally, data and AI has actually shifted from being a technology topic to a business topic, okay? And most CEOs who are successful today, if you see, I think we did an analysis and we are seeing an increasing number of CEOs use data and AI in their annual report. It was not the case before, okay? And what we're also seeing is when people are saying it in the annual report, a lot of responsibility comes in. You're actually committing to the world that you're going to do it, right? So then they'll ask you, how much are you investing? Then, okay, you invested 3 billion. What is your outcome? right? Are you doing it responsibly? So then there's a baggage of questions that start coming in, right? That is actually where the market is moving towards. So if you can just put the next first slide. So yeah, keep just 2 clicks for, yeah. So what we're seeing is that successful people actually have a lot of leadership sponsorship, especially from the CEO. Okay. And trust me, it's not easy. It's not that you can just walk into the CEO's office and say, hey, I'm giving you a new responsibility. From today, you have to help me with data and AI, right? Or the strategy for it. But what we're realizing is data and AI is actually going to help make a CEO successful for the next 3 to 4 year horizon, especially today in 2023. That's so true, right? So please remember, this is very, very important. Otherwise, all the other 4 factors actually don't matter. Okay, you can always say, I'm building a data and AI core. People say, so what? Everybody's doing it, right? See, fundamentally, a lot of skepticism has to be built in our own view of how we look at the world. Otherwise, we will never be able to bring significant change. We'll be bringing incremental change, right? So next one. Next one is, yeah, talent. Today, if you talk to me and say, what is the number 1 area to make money in data and AI? It is trading. Number 1, okay? I was just preparing for this session and I just realized that it was like 2 weeks since I browsed. So much has happened in this space. Just 2 weeks. In fact, sometimes it's like every day there's a new announcement by somebody. Either it's Google, either it's Meta, either it's OpenAI, if otherwise NVIDIA is coming and saying something, or Europe has come up with a data and AI policy. If the companies don't do it, the regulators come in, they create a policy, then you have to understand what that is. So every day that this landscape is changing, it's fascinating. Okay, so a lot of learnings and learning programs, that's where you make the money today. In fact, I was reading today, somebody was teaching, how do you become a good prompt engineer? That's the latest training topic, right? And it's a real topic. It's not even a fun video. It's a real video where we're helping people get into that field. That's a new domain that's coming up, right? Next one. This is what we discussed about data and AI core. This obviously is the core. It is a fundamental technology investment area. So we do need to have an area where data and AI quality and the scale of investment is not compromised, right? That's the third part, right? The fourth one, please. Yeah. Responsible AI, I think we already spoke about it briefly, but I'll tell you one more thing on responsible AI. A lot of focus is shifting from just looking at how to do this in a regulatory way to how it is getting perceived in a regulatory way. 2 different things, okay? The data scientists will vouch and say this has been done correctly. We have enforced and we have followed all the right policies. But the perception is very different, okay? And this is also an exception-based world. Let's say that I'm a CEO of an organization. I have a very elite group of people. Everybody will make a mistake in that board, right? Just imagine if you are a CEO of an organization, do you think you're going to have people you work with who never make mistakes? Who are so perfect every day, you just walk in and this give you all the good news, everything runs, it doesn't happen. So invariably, if you see human to human equation, invariably somebody will make a mistake. But psychologically, we are all trained to forgive humans better. Okay. And this is actually the reason why AI makes a mistake, it gets a lot more mileage. Okay. The recent example, I think there was Apple Pay or some organization where they were having an analysis of applicants, men and women, in terms of a credit card or something like that, right? And for whatever reason, the model felt that women with the same kind of credit score should not be given. Right? Clearly, it's a training problem. But are we telling that when we walk into every bank in any part of the world, this bias doesn't exist? Right? A lot of bias exists just by looking at what dress you're wearing. Forget about even before you open your mouth, people say, oh, this person, I should not. Right? So we are somehow psychologically forgiving the human bias, but when it comes to a machine, because you don't have that single throat to choke, we sort of amplify. This is the reality. And this also you should know, because when you are as business leaders putting big bets on AI, you will face backlash. AI will not always get everything right. Okay, the last one. Yeah. So this actually is a marriage. This is not a dating, right? So you have to have a lot of investment. In fact, Accenture recently announced $3 billion in data and AI, just I think a month back. Okay, and that's a lot of money. Even if you start spending that money, it will take you years, right? So commitment on a long term is needed for us to make any significant impact. Otherwise, we just do a small automation somewhere and say, you know, I am the number one, right? This again is something that we are telling our clients, and slowly we are helping them move from data and AI as a cost play to a growth play. Okay, that again is happening, but it's not happening as successfully as we would want. So this also is very, very important. Next one. Okay, so now we'll talk about the business value side. Okay, how can we maximize enterprise? Next one, framing it right. So sometimes, you know, there's always this constant tussle between a business and IT team, right? The business team says, my God, IT, you are wrong. IT guy says, you never framed the question properly, right? I did whatever you told me, right? That's this classical, I couldn't find who's the source for it, but this is a classical problem. Depending, you always look at the perspective of where you are standing. In effect, both of them are wrong, right? So, yeah. Okay, next one. So I'm going to ask you a question. This is probably the only question in the session, okay? The question is, we already seen this framework, right? One more click. This is your problem statement. You're a CXO. You can decide any company. You want to be CXO of, CDO of Apple, congratulations. NVIDIA, congratulations. OpenAI, congratulations. You're given $1 million as investment. Okay, that's your budget for the year. And you have to choose between two teams. Okay, two teams are coming and saying, sir, I need this money. Great. What exactly will be your approach to thinking about who will be better to invest in? Yeah. Okay. What do you mean by problem statement right?
If I am aware of the problem they are trying to solve, then I can judge on that. Okay, this is what they should be understanding. That I could solve. But if they both are operating for separate problem statements, then this is what they will do.
Let us say they're looking at separate problem statements. So I'll just help you. This is the practical side of how businesses invest. Okay, just imagine that you are sitting and you're having money and you're having authority, you're having people listen to you. Now you're having this question. There are what six different touch points in this equation. Okay. Now, first thing I want to ask you is, which touch point do you think is most critical? Yeah.
The last one.
Last one. Business. Sir, you are not allowed. Okay, you are not allowed. Yeah. Yeah. Data input. Okay, why?
The model will perform like which type of data it is getting, it is perform accordingly. So data is itself biased or bad or not properly collected. The model will not perform properly.
Okay. Okay, 1 point. Yes. Sorry, sir. I mean, this is out of scope for you. Okay. Yeah. Business outcome. Oh.
And it will be only outcome is not in our hand. So whatever it is our hand is other kinds. So first thing is that problem is verified. If the problem is verified, then only we will know what into take consider, what we input here neglect. And upon that data we build a model.
Okay. Okay, I just looked at the clock. I have like 20 more slides. Yeah.
Identifying the right problem.
Right problem. Okay. What do you mean by right problem? Both of you are saying the right English, but just think that, it's $1 million. It's not a small amount of money. People will dissect every letter. What do you mean by right? Yeah.
Whatever the whole other part of the equation only depends is as good as the problem. So unless
Correct.
we identify the right problem, the whole thing is going to go down the drain.
So what do we mean by the right problem? Think, this is a real question, by the way. If you go and tell a CEO you got to invest 1 million, he'll say, explain to me in a logical way, right? Yeah, I'll give him a chance. Yeah. Okay, so maybe in the interest of time, I'll just give you the answer. The way we do it is, everything is important, but the most important thing is business problem, right? But let me explain what do we mean by right problem. See, you can let's imagine that there are two roles in an organization. One could be let's say it's a retail company or telco company, right? Somebody's at the counter and you're having customer service. Okay. Now you feel that this problem, if I solve for this one customer service agent or manager at the desk, you can say my projected, let's say, saving or revenue or new clients onboarding, etc., is X million. It's a very broad use case, right? The challenge in all of these data and AI use cases come if this problem is repeatable. Okay, so how business leaders will look at this equation is, where do I have the mass of problems? It is linked to, for example, the sales agent. The sales agent doesn't get the right catalog or the right pricing, and that impacts 5,000 sales agents. Even if 1% they can sort of increase on their conversions, what is the delta change? That is what is one aspect of the right problem. Okay. The second aspect of the right problem is, are we doing it legally? Today in data and AI, a lot of data is available on consumer behavior illegally. Whether we like it or not, that is also part of the game. So doing it right also comes from that aspect. You might have made money for those sales agents and your company's margin and number of customers would have increased. But then 2 years down the line, you'll have a case saying you use somebody's personal information and you actually, violated the regulation. That is another aspect of right. The third aspect of right is, how does this help address the insecurities of the people in the organization? Today, the biggest invisible barrier to data and AI adoption is insecurity. This is the reality, right? If I give my data to him, my control will go. Why should I give? He'll think the same way. I'll give him a little bit. I'll give a summary, but I won't give the full data. This is happening in even fundamental data sharing. Forget about analysis and adoption of business. All that is much later. Okay. So the other aspect when we see in data input, somebody said data input, I don't know who said, you said. Data input, what we see is, are we bringing in more data variables from multiple systems and not just a unidirectional one? Which I'll cover the next slide. If you can go, I think I'm way behind schedule. Yeah, go on. More. Yeah, just the full thing. Right. So this is what I was talking about. So each stage has multiple aspects. Some of you actually explained, but the most important thing is scale. If you don't have scale, you're wasting your time. Okay, you can put 1 million, even if you get 300K or 500K, whatever, you can't really claim it as a credit. People will say, well, other company put 1 million, they got 10 million out, right? So remember that when you choose problem statements, look at repeatability, look at coverage, right? And look at consistency, right? Of the same problem happening, so that the model can actually, be scalable. Yeah, put the next one. Also, I think this is something, I'm assuming that you would have read, there's a very fascinating book by Chris Christensen, Innovators DNA. I don't know if you guys have read this book. It's a very, very fascinating book. It actually helps us understand innovation itself in a fundamental way. I mean, if you haven't read it, please go and read it, because it's like a lot of basic ingredients to make us think differently, right? He talks about 5 skills. First is associational skills, questioning, observing, networking, and experimenting. And each of this is a chapter. So he explains questioning. How do you question what is happening? Not go and fight. How do you question in a logical way and make people understand something is not right? And so on and so forth, right? Next one. Innovators DNA. Right? I didn't put the source. Yeah. No, previous. So as we're doing, previous. Yeah. As we are doing this analysis, please remember that first party, second party, third party, there are 3 sources of data. Okay. The whole world, if you look at, again, a very high level classification, 60 to 75% of people are only focusing on first party data. Their own data and organization, they're trying to figure out what can I do, what can I not do. Even there are issues. Okay. But there is, with all of the other technologies coming in, a lot of ecosystem data and second party, which is actually untapped. The same model. He won't share with me because he will feel I will go with another partner after taking his data, or he will feel like that. So there's a lot of implicit insecurity that is actually causing a lot of disconnect in the system. And the most important thing that we are actually also focusing as a team in Accenture is third-party data. Okay. In certain countries, it is actually very, very powerful for us to get third-party data to talk about consumer behavior in a legal way. Okay. Example, US. US actually is very extreme, the way they actually can capture third-party data, right? So when you're looking at identifying what is your problem, right? Please look at all these 3 data sources. And again, there are 2 different kinds of gaps. You guys must have done this in your class, but the first one is I'm doing something well, but I can be better. My marketing teams are actually getting conversions on their campaigns, but I feel I can do better. That is your performance gap. I'm not at all targeting this segment. That is your opportunity gap. I'm just giving a very layman term explanation. But this actually is a very profound analysis of even trying to decide which one you want to go after. Somebody said 3-year, 5-year, right? That will pretty much be an opportunity gap. Okay, something that has never been done. See, most CEOs want to be disruptive. They don't want to just be doing 2 things more and saying I did a good job, right? They want to leave behind a legacy. So most of your strategy vision will be coming here. This will pretty much be incremental, something that you won't even say beyond your board meeting that I've achieved this, right? Go on. And again, the point I was saying earlier, this actually is a travel use case. You just have this very sweet 6 circles. I mean, it's a very cute overlaps. All these 6 are fundamentally different teams. Forget about data systems or data solutions, right? So just getting this overlap right in terms of sharing is a big challenge. So this is the reality in which we have to operate and bring value, right? So this is something for us to also think in terms of the point somebody said about CEO owning it. If the CEO owns it, all these people have to align. But if it is a separate CDO who is functionally not empowered enough to drive, this group will say, I'm holding 60% of the revenue. Don't talk to me. I know what I'm doing. This group will say, I'm so new, I don't have time. And then eventually they will just start with this as a small, the lazy man's excuse in business is let's start small. There's a lazy man's excuse, right? Let's start small, do a small thing here. In 2 years, the CDO will leave because he will realize that, or she will realize you can't do anything here, right? So please figure out as a CEO, as a business leader, how do you get all these systems to talk to each other? That's going to be a very, very critical part for you to address. Next. Yeah. This is a very complex slide. But I just tell this actually is a slide that we're also investing in terms of how do you define what is a data-led business model? A lot of English is happening. Data-led, AI-led, data-centric. Yeah, all these different jargons are happening. But so we are trying to sort of put it in a very, very simple structure to say, what does it mean? There has to be a revenue model. There has to be a value play. There has to be this whole element of using data. And then there can be motivations or reward mechanisms in place, right? So we are actually coming up with a point of view on this. Hopefully, next 6 months, we'll have this as a clear approach to say, how can a business start focusing on data monetization or data-led business models in a structured way? Okay, so it's just an early bird view. Yeah, next. Okay, so now we'll talk about a very interesting thing I actually had presented in one of my earlier supply chain sessions, and I realized that it was so pertinent for this audience as well. That's why I brought some elements of this here. See, so far we've been looking at a process, a CEO, what should a CEO do, should not do, etc. Now we will look at what is the data view of the world. Let's imagine the data model or the data system is actually a person. And how is that person looking at the process and the people working in that organization? Okay, next. So this is an example of a very complex flowchart, which is very, very true in trade finance, right? Basically, it is an equation from 1 to 2. importer, exporter, very basic. But the real world, there are so many different stakeholders who come in. Some come in because of regulation, some come in because of geographical restrictions, and others come in because they're part of the process. Okay, next. And typically, as a consulting organization, we will start saying, hey, here we can use e-documents, here we can use blockchain, here we can sort of use some kind of IoT device to track where the shipment is going. So all that is a 101 view of value. Okay. But what is interesting, go to the next one. What is interesting is the data side. If you look at fundamentally, you got an importer, you got an exporter, and there are other players or organizations in between. And there are different document types. I think there are 10 document types here. Okay. And each of these are the different fields in the document. Okay. So this analysis was done by BCG. I think the very fascinating thing they've done is they've tried to see how often are these fields repeated across documents. Okay. That's typically like a step beyond what we normally do, right? Next one. And if you see, they also put a flow chart. This actually is, the green dots are the ones actually new data points or data fields that are relevant to the transaction. The red ones are pretty much duplicate or repeating. Okay. Just analysis of how the data view of the world is. Next one. Right. So if you see, fundamentally, in this analysis, 200 billion data field interactions actually are expected to happen in a year. Okay. Out of which only 1% is relevant. Just think about it. We talk about data, we talk about AI, responsible AI, but what is also happening because as human beings, we've been using these systems from a paper-based world to the digital world, we have not optimized this. So a lot of data that is getting stored in so many systems is actually of no value. We are spending IT cost, we're spending a system cost, we're spending people to use the data, audit cost, right? So this actually is another, I think there's a new movement that will come very soon, which is called optimum data management, which is just about, the way design thinking happens. You guys must be knowing design thinking, right? What does design thinking do? Essentially, it says that if 5 people have to get involved in a specific problem, all 5 come together. Let's look at what your own personas is, what your expectations are, desires are. Let's have a common way of addressing it. Minimal with all the constraints. Similarly, there has to be a model or a structuring of all organizations pretty much on what is the minimal data you need to run your company, right? Just because 10 people are free doesn't mean you just keep on copying the data in different ways, in different systems. Then there's an archiving problem, auditing problem, all of that, right? So this actually is a very important takeaway for all of us. And we're actually challenging this in some of our clients as well as we speak. Yeah, next. Okay. As much as this data is not enough, there's a lot more data coming in. 5G IoT, so every IoT device will send a signal every 5 seconds. Okay, just do the math, how many times it will pass information. Maybe it's a location of a ship passing through a sea. It will keep on doing every 5 seconds. So somebody has to take the 5-second data, put it in a system, then you have to analyze it, then you have to archive it, right? Then you have to make sense out of it. Okay, that's just one device. So there'll be thousands and thousands of devices. So 5G IoT is going to be a big game change. Metaverse, a little bit is happening. Metaverse, the expert is sitting here. So I don't think metaverse much has happened, right? Sustainability is actually an enforcing game. Okay, this again, I don't know how much we are looking at sustainability beyond the English, right? A few years back, sustainability was a pure English topic. Right? Everybody will say, I want to be sustainable. They'll do one small project in the island near Philippines and they'll say, I'm sustainable. And that will be on their CEO study or president's report, right? Now we have moved to a way where we can actually measure sustainability. The moment you can measure, nobody can choose just English words. So we're moving in a big way from English to mathematics, which is again sustainability. And the last one is our favorite topic. I don't know how much time I have, but I just take like a few minutes to finish this. Yeah, go on, next. Yeah. How many of you have read Dan Pink's book, which talks about right mind or the right brain approach? Anybody has read? You should read that book. I can give you the name of the book. It's actually, the author's name is Daniel Pink. And what he talks about is he's saying, go to the next slide. What he's saying is, just a second. What he's saying is that the world has shifted from just doing mundane tasks in terms of machines and algorithms. Now machines and algorithms are getting into creativity. Okay. So far, all that, see, whatever my age is, what I learned in my college was rules, logic, process, structure, pretty much all of which is just to conform to whatever is an organization or whatever society or the world, etc. Right? And where we had an outlet, painting. We can do any painting, nobody will object unless it's very, dramatically wrong. Similarly, music. Similarly, any kind of art form. That's considered as a right brain, right? So in that book, he explains how the future of workforce is not going to be dependent on how good you know the rules or how good you follow the processes, but it's going to depend on things like judgment. It's a right brain skill, intuition, right? Empathy, decision making, right? You can't have a policy for decision making. You can't say these 4 things if you do, a decision is made, because decisions are based on so many unknown factors, right? So please read the book if you haven't read it, because this is also what we are seeing as consulting organizations. A lot of leaders are now moving to upgrade their emotional and their right brain skills. Okay, because the machines are taking over all the left brain work anyway. Eventually they will take over. Eventually they'll be cost effective, right? So you as a leader in 15 years or 10 years, your success will not be on, sorry to say, some of the principles that you have learned, but on how you can be original and how you can be creative. Again, things which you cannot teach. This is how the world is moving. Even I'm learning this. So we're all the same journey. Just quickly on this video. Right? Yeah. In the interest of time, I'll skip that video. So just like iPhone, every year in September when Apple has this big event and Cupertino, everybody says, my God, this is the baseline for technology innovation in the mobile space. The company you should watch out for in the AI space today, at least what I'm doing, is NVIDIA. Okay, NVIDIA, and that video is actually was of NVIDIA, but in the interest of time, I'm already behind. I'll skip that. But you can watch it. It's like a 2-minute, 3-minute video. Every year they launch a keynote video. It talks about the different ways in which data and AI is using and is being used effectively. Okay. So this one is actually what I was talking about, Dan Pink's book. I'll tell you, very fascinating. I was researching a bit and said, can a machine have empathy? Can you train a machine to have empathy? Yes or no? What do you think?
Even your definition, theoretically, you can always.
Theoretically, you can always do. Okay. So there are apps today that help people who are depressed to talk. And apparently they're good. Okay. Last night I was playing with a couple of them and they're fairly okay. So basically, empathy is one of the most difficult things even for a human being to have. Okay, forget about a machine. But somewhere we are getting into the right brain areas of emotion and all of that with machines, which means it's scalable. Whether it does a good job or not, it's a different thing. Actually, it's scalable. So this is the way the world is moving. So you should be very clear about what is each and every one of yours unique skill set as you move up. Okay, and because the baseline has changed dramatically post-COVID. Yeah, next. Right, this you can skip. Next. Yeah, just one more. Okay, so fundamentally, large learning models or LLMs or GPT, whichever is your fancy, affiliated word. We are, from Accenture's point of view, we are seeing that there are 5 different ways they can help. I mean, it'll obviously evolve as we move forward, but as of now, it's this. One is obviously creating, which means creating a lot more content. We already spoke about it. Advising, right? If you want a very objective advice, you don't go to your father these days, right? You feel my father is not, he will say only his point of view. So we go to a machine. Machine is correct, right? So a lot of very, very practical, honest advices or apps that provide advisory options are coming out. Coding, okay? Very soon, coders will be a rare tribe of people because everything you can just say in English over a cup of coffee and chapati and say, ye karo, wo karo, and by the time you finish lunch, code is ready, right? That's the world we are moving towards. Automating, of course, has been happening for the past almost a decade, right? It's been incrementally happening. It's going to happen a lot more. The last is protecting in terms of regulations. So how do you know that you are actually not adhering to a regulation? How do you know? Let's say there are 100,000 people in an organization. How do you know? Nobody knows. There are people, yes, there are systems, control, but I think if you have a machine to keep track of every PO that is processed, every, let's say, contract that is signed, from a machine's perspective, it might be much faster to sort of identify this any anomaly. Then you can explain this is the reason why this happened, right? So there are two things happening in LLM space. One is consumption as is. There are a lot of APIs. Every day it's become an API market now. If you go to OpenAI, every 2-3 days they keep releasing something, right? Similarly, now Meta's come, everybody's come. You can either consume this as is, or the most powerful thing is to customize it. Customize means what? If I have a chatbot, I don't want my data to go out. I want to. But what if my data goes out? I think there was a case of Samsung's data actually going out, right? So it's a very big risk for me, right? If I'm having some proprietary algorithm or proprietary idea, by mistake, if it goes to other people, that this is the kind of things that you can do, data and AI or ChatGPT, then I'm lost. So customizing is a lot of bringing it internal to your organization in terms of data security, data privacy, and using it. Next, right? Skip the next one. Yeah, next. Yeah. The other thing that LLM is doing, which is very fascinating, is it has changed the format. Otherwise, usually it is only text. By mistake, it is image. An image will be like, oh my God, Picasso has come. Because that is how we were. We didn't have the ability, right? Right now, I think, we are getting into obviously a lot more video and 3D gaming. I recently saw something, the next one of slides will be there. It's called brain to text. Now they are actually doing research. Just by observing a person's brain, can we determine what is that girl thinking right now? Can we actually have it in words? That's the research. And apparently a couple of companies are doing it. I'm not very skeptical. I may be biased, but that is the level to which we are trying to push the envelope of value. Okay, just imagine you have a patient can't talk. Okay, they're suffering a lot of pain. Is there a way you can understand what is the problem? Right? So it can be used in very, very niche areas like that. Right? Go to the next one. Next one. Yeah. So this LLM space has completely transformed since January. A lot of companies have come on board. This actually, I was trying to find the latest chart of this because every month there are like 2-3 charts, right? So it's a very, very crazy field. So again, if you want to pick one unique business model, just latch on to one of these areas. $1 million is a minimum. You can make it if you really latch on to one area and get in there, right? Next. Yeah. So because I'm working with MIT also, and obviously from Accenture's perspective, I think what we're also realizing is Gen AI is still not an advanced area yet. Okay, a lot of open questions, lot of concerns, but still people are playing with it. The only reason they're playing with it is because it doesn't have an entry barrier. My father can just type a question, answer will come. Just need to know how to communicate, right? So a lot of constraints are coming, and eventually each of this will get addressed, right? But just go in with a little bit of that open mind to say there are obviously challenges, but still how do we work around it and adopt it? Next one. Yeah, this is the last section. Hopefully I can finish on the 2 minutes, right? Deep sea. Yeah. Next. Yeah, stop. The only reason why humans will still be successful even after 50 years is because we have something called common sense, right? And I'm saying this with a lot of, I actually did, think about this myself, and it is so difficult for an algorithm to understand what we take for granted. Okay. Would we ever think a cow is suddenly grown this big? I'm just giving a very visual example, right? This could be anything. Like you're driving let's say you have a self-driven car. You see a child crossing, but then the child is crossing, and then there's a tree. Do you assume the child is not there? Child is there. Just because you can't see doesn't mean the child is not there. That is how we understand it. Okay, child is going to come behind the tree. We're going to break the car. But AI doesn't think like that. Right? So a lot of fundamental earth-based, elements we have picked up. It will take a lot of time for machines, and definitely they'll get programmed there also, but still not to the extent that we can, right? Just a few examples, right? One more click. Yeah, right. So gravity, right? Explaining how a certain object will flow. It takes a lot of time for machines to understand that. It's not like they just see it every day, right? They have to get trained. Again, objects that you actually cannot see doesn't mean they're not there, right? So these are very, very interesting things that are still going to keep us having some good jobs next, right? Okay, these are some interesting predictions which I think we are seeing the market. I just want to share with you. There's going to be a lot more data sharing happening in the world. Data sharing, insight sharing, algorithm sharing. It could be by organization to organization, a lot more open. Ecosystems is one aspect, is already happening. OpenAI and Meta, everybody's trying to collaborate. Governments. A classic supply chain problem, the biggest problem is data from Africa doesn't reach here because you can't share. Or data from Europe doesn't reach here because you can't share. So how do you have government to government enforcements to make sure data actually can be shared? So this is going to be a very, very big business focus. A lot of money to be made. Doesn't exist right now. The extent it should exist, right? Ultimately, individuals. Right now, if I want to share my data with anybody, I don't have a way. We don't have a mechanism. Maybe I can put it in a Google Drive, but that's not a mechanism. In future, we will have a mechanism where I will share my data with you. I will exactly know what you're doing with my data, and you also will be able to do the same thing with me. And it'll be a very transparent kind of a simple, kind of a visualization. That is the level to which this economic model is going to go. A lot of money will be made. The next one, the most important caveat will be data privacy and right to forget. I don't know how many of you know about right to forget. Do you know about right to forget? Yeah. So one of the European mindsets is they don't want to remember what they did in the past. Right? They say every 3 years, let's try to, or whatever the X years, let's try to forget that these things happen. So this is going to be a big, big issue when we enforce privacy or let's say sharing economics, right? Next one is everybody is going to get an assistant. Congratulations, right? All of you will have an assistant. Now you will tune your assistant to with whatever. We are already having avatars, but avatar is just a visual of our face. But just imagine that you have an assistant to help you in everything. It's like in philosophy they say is your soul, spirit, or whatever. It will be like that, right? It doesn't matter who you are in the organization. It could be a student, teacher, principal, president. Doesn't matter. Every one of you is going to have an assistant, and then what you will say. Go to the next one, please. That's what you're going to say. My AI will talk to yours. We'll figure it out. This is going to become a reality. Okay. Already, this is predicted as one of the biggest areas of improvement for mankind. That's why when Dr. Aditya read that it's going to be the biggest, this is what I was thinking. Just imagine if everybody has their own advisor who tells why you did this, why you should not do this, how you can get something more all the time. Right? Next. When you have that, productivity will drop. Why do I say productivity will drop? Maybe it's actually a wrong word. Productivity will actually be difficult to differentiate. Everybody will do the same thing. She will do the same thing. He will do the same thing because you're all fundamentally supported by an invisible force, which is more or less tapping into the same systems. So how is it that he's going to be different from me and I'm going to be different from you? So it's going to be a very, very interesting challenge. How are they going to differentiate? Let's say we are going to hire 10 people from this specific college, practically. All 10 of you have used ChatGPT to write your resumes. Looks like, there are 10 Elon Musks here. How will an interviewing company decide? That's already happening, by the way. So people are using ChatGPT. So we're calling it professional bullshitism, whatever it is. But that is actually really a problem. So everybody will try to say the best words, the right way of saying. So what's going to be a problem? Let's go to the next line. What's going to be a problem is there's going to be a quest for authenticity. Okay. Sometimes when you are going to be interviewing people, you'll think all 5 resumes are very similar. What do I do? Because they've all used the best models behind it, right? And then one of the things in which they will start looking at value is not by looking at a resume anymore, but by asking you to come and talk on a topic. Okay. That's again one way. It's not a foolproof way. People can still memorize and talk, but still that's one way, right? This actually is going to be a very, very interesting in terms of workforce. So in fact, in all the universities in US, some universities have banned GPT-4. Some universities have said, I can have it, but there's an open policy. You should have a way to say this part was done using ChatGPT. Okay, so the biggest industry that's going to be changed by ChatGPT and the large language models is the education industry. So a lot of people are now thinking, if ChatGPT can give the answer, why will somebody give me 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs or 40 lakhs or whatever to learn? So one of the implicit issues here is education becomes very commoditized. Education as is has become commoditized because of massively open online courses. I can sit here and take a Stanford course. It was not possible 10 years back, right? So this is going to be even worse. So this actually is going to be a very interesting challenge for all the vice chancellors in the education industry to think, how is my education program going to be unique? Okay, next one. Yeah. So right now, what has happened is, as I said, data and AI is pretty much left brain. Some automation happened, but my song is mine. I composed this song. This artist is my favorite. Tomorrow you're going to have, and we're already having the NVIDIA video, they actually have an AI composing a song. And then there's a live orchestra performing that song. Okay. So you're going to have a lot of competition with machines who can produce a better music. Just imagine if tomorrow Apple Music decides that I'm going to get 10 algorithms and they will give all the top chartbusters every year or every month. How many pop artists will go out of business? Right? They might say, I'm using a little bit AI, but it's no, I don't want humans. I only want AI, right? Because it's cheap, it's affordable. So it's going to be a lot of challenge. What we are seeing today as human plus AI in the creativity space is going to become very soon a challenge of human versus AI. A lot of people will start saying, you know, why is it that we should use machines in creativity? Let at least that part be led to humans. So that's going to happen, right? The other one, very interesting. So today, if I want to have an image, let's say an image of a mountain, I go to a designer and say, I want an image of a mountain, right? And he'll say, give me proper emotions. He'll say, draw an emotion map, empathy map, you understand. That is how we used to do it. We are doing it today. Tomorrow, what's going to happen? I want an image of a mountain. 15 images will come. The options will help me change the requirement. I won't even need a requirement. You understand? I like it. Oh, I didn't think of this. Oh, yeah, blue sky. Oh, I didn't think of this. Okay, there's a bird flying. So I will actually be creating my requirements based on the options I can see. This is already happening with Midjourney now, right? So a lot of the designer community is worried because this is a very hard skill to have. Creativity is a very hard skill. But if in the click of a minute, I'm having 15 options and I can just take one from this, and then I can just build my own requirement. So then it's no longer about value of what you want. It is the wow factor of what you see. This is going to be a fundamental imbalance that we're going to see in the designer community. That's why I'm saying creativity is getting unleashed, but also going to be rehashed. Okay, next one. So the very difficult thing is going to be being original, especially as an artist. You'll have to say this is actually 100% human. The album is not done by any AI. So becoming original will become a very, very cool thing. Last one. Yeah. I don't know how many of you realize, but let us say we are in Karnataka, right? Let us say you want to run a campaign for Kodagu, Coorg. Okay. You go online and look for an image of a Kodagu person, let's say, riding a bike. Just go and find. It'll be extremely difficult. Okay. You will find the face of an American. You will find the face of an European. This is the reality. Okay. You will find maybe in some cases Southeast Asia. But if you want to go very regional and say, I want a Kodagu person riding this bike and I want to have a campaign created on that, you will not find images. Okay. 4.5 years back, we were actually looking for African Americans in a specific business case, photos of African Americans studying in school, etc. It was just so difficult to find because when the images were created, they were created for a specific audience. And that invisible bias is still continuing. Okay. So what a lot of this is going to happen, I mean, a lot of what's going to happen in normalizing diversity is you can run a micro campaign for people of Kodagu, of Mangalore. I'm sure there are some, the way they dress, the way they actually, smile, or the way they actually wear different kinds of, ornaments. It's different, but you won't get that readily, right? So a lot of regional or micro-regional campaigns are going to get unleashed. And not you creating it from scratch, by the way. All you have to say is, Kodagu, bike beside the sea. You get an image, right? So that's the power of some of these visual tools that we are seeing in the market today, which also means eventually you will get it for yourself. Suppose you are trying to convince your father to buy you a car, right? You might as well have yourself as an image. Why you should have an American or a, right? So a lot of that is also possible computing wise, where you can actually create a lot more hyper personalized. I mean, campaign is just one example, but this is the power of where AI is taking us. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So I know we've spoken a lot about business, money, but I think there is one area where we really can improve as human beings is actually in making everybody feel included. There's still a lot of bias in the real world, whether we like it or not. And AI will only do so much, right? But it is up to us to create those use cases to actually make people inclusive and special. And on that note, I have one video and then we can stop. Okay, I know you're staring at me. But...
Why don't you walk me through the board? Walk me through the board.
Thank you. Thank you. So using this equation on the upper left right here, I'm projecting that we need to win at least 99 games in order to make it to the postseason. We need to score at least 814 runs in order to win those games and allow no more than 645 runs.
What's this?
This is the code that I've written for our year-to-year projections. This is building in all the intelligence that we have to project players.
Okay.
It's about getting things down to one number. Using the stats the way we read them, we'll find value in players that nobody else can see. People are overlooked for a variety of biased reasons and perceived flaws. Age, appearance, personality. Bill James and mathematics cut straight through that. Billy, of the 20,000 notable players for us to consider, I believe that there is a championship team of 25 people that we could afford because everyone else in baseball undervalues them. Like an island of misfit toys. Billy, this is Chad Bradford. He's a relief pitcher. He's one of the most undervalued players in baseball. His defect is that he throws funny. Nobody in the big leagues cares about him because he looks funny. This guy could be not just the best pitcher in our bullpen, but one of the most effective relief pitchers in all of baseball. This guy should cost $3 million a year. We can get him for $237,000.
This actually is a real story. I don't know how many have watched Moneyball. Good. It's one of my favorite movies. But I think the power of the story is very relevant for any business. We are always having a bias when we make decisions, whether we like it or not, right? Sometimes it's very obvious to say somebody is funny because the way they throw is funny, but there are so many invisible barriers in how we think. And if we use data and AI, we will not just make money, but we'll also make the world a lot more inclusive and people feel special. So with that, I'd like to thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you for the amazing session. So I think it added a lot of value and made us think through even more and would push us to think more in the future. So now we are open to questions. If anybody amongst the audience has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Yeah.
So since the advent of ChatGPT, a lot of organizations have started experimenting with GPT as in how they can integrate it in their own organizations. So I wanted to understand if Accenture is doing something of that sort.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, we're doing. I think everybody is jumping in. It's not about Accenture or X or Y. So first is Accenture has a big partnership with Microsoft, which has been, I mean, in fact, we even have a joint venture called Accenture Microsoft Business Group. It's called AMBG. It's been there for a long time. So it's just a very natural, pathway for us to leverage Microsoft products. But I think the power of bringing GPT into your organization is probably going to take at least a year for us to stabilize. A lot of organizations are starting out, but there are so many layers that have to be cracked, especially if it's a global organization, because global organizations have to have a way to cover the regulatory mechanisms of so many countries. Okay, you won't believe how many countries have created an AI policy in the past 2 years or are thinking about it, right? So that's actually the
right. Yeah. So one problem in this thing that I have observed is with organizations jumping onto GPT, that they are not kind of focusing on the problems first, but they have identified a technology to use, and then they are figuring out what problems they can solve. So what do you think about that?
No, that is true. That is very true. I think the problem is that ChatGPT has become too accessible, right? Usually when we have a new model or when we have a kind of technology, it will first come to the technical people, then technical people will take it to the architecture people, then it will slowly get into the procurement team and say, can we try an experiment? But ChatGPT having this, I think what ChatGPT has cracked is a very fundamental nature of human beings, which is ask questions, right? You want to know something, ask a question. So ChatGPT has got that format right. So because it's got the attention of the board, now of any company, everybody wants to figure out what is the right use case, to your point. I think fundamentally there are 3 or 4 use cases we are going after, pretty much again the same principle: scale, getting it in terms of minimum investment, maximum credibility. Because the first experiment fails, then the whole company will feel this is a waste of time. So it's also a little bit of that public image they have to save.
Hello, sir. I'm from the supply chain.
Okay.
And as you try to use AI in use cases, you find that you need a very strong data foundation.
Yes.
If you don't have a strong data foundation, there's a lot of hallucination in the results of AI, right? Now, the problem that we have is we have very shaky foundations of data. Has Accenture done studies around how are people working with this? How are they getting it right?
Yeah. So there are 3 aspects to it, right? First is, a lot of the data foundations have been built ad hoc. Okay. It's like most of the time in businesses, especially in data and AI, there's nothing structured from the top. Okay. It's like one business unit has 10,000 people. The leader said, let's do it. They built it, right? They would have got short-term success. The company would have said, awesome. But eventually it will become islands of different maturity levels of data, right? The other thing I'll tell you, there's actually a field which I could not bring it to the session because of time. It's called, I think it's called data-led or data-centric artificial intelligence. The idea is that data fields have to be common. Let's say you're having a supply chain problem, the same problem of importer-exporter. Let us say that this is actually has to be scaled across 10 countries. If each country has their own data model or data set, even the data set, the way it's structured, the model cannot just scale, right? So fundamentally, the equivalent analogy is when you travel to a different country, the first thing you look for is the plug point. Just look at that analogy. If every data set is a different shape, different kind of walls, etc., one model cannot fit in. At a given point of time, you have to adapt it to every specific case, right? So the first and foremost thing is that's why I like that the study on trade finance. Have an enterprise data strategy which clearly says what is the minimum data infrastructure you need to create. Minimum. You can do over and above if you're doing experimentation. What is the minimum consistent data structure, right? Now, for that to happen, it's not easy also, right? Because every organization has to adhere to local laws and invisible perceptions. Like there are some cultures, there's actually a psychological study of cultures between who are individualistic and cultures who are team-centric, right? Now, people who are individualistic might feel a lot more threatened if machine is taking over some of their control or some of the ability to take decisions, right? So that is again another invisible layer. But fundamentally, an enterprise data and AI strategy, number one. Number two is actually redesign the complete data layer. right? It's very difficult, but I'm telling you it will happen. Because as ChatGPT is coming in, to your question, you're going to get 10 times more data. If your existing data architecture is not consistent, it's not like conformable to an organization model, there's no way you're going to bring in more data. No way you're going to bring in more IoT data, right? So a lot of people are stepping back. In fact, we are actually working on a couple of projects, myself included, on how do we craft the enterprise data and AI strategy, and then look at what is the data quality, right? What data sets should be retired. They don't need it anymore. Okay, just because somebody has said had a separate policy or whatever, they had a data kind of architecture. Third thing is the plug point analogy. How to make sure data is shareable across units. Okay, one is across countries, second is across business units, right? So it's actually a tedious process. It's probably going to take at least a year and a half, depending on the size of the company, to craft this, invest in it, and then literally reframe the whole data architecture. But that is the only surgery we can do. We can keep putting band-aids, but eventually, if you want to have an enterprise level value play, you need to have something that is reframed.
Thank you very much, Satish. And we always say, if you can, you do it. If you can't, you preach it. Okay, so I am from that. I'm from the preaching business. I'm Venkatesh, Head of Supply Chain Consulting from CII. It's been a wonderful talk from Satish, and thanks to Aditya as well, who really put out a great show within a very short notice. I'm just returning from a consulting assignment with one of the world's largest liquor companies. And they started using the term import and export. I was just wondering, like, is this plant catering to some of the overseas countries? No, they just say that when anything goes off Karnataka, it is export. And the problem, the disconnects is mind-boggling. And the multinational companies who are in, they are finding it very difficult to, because at the end of the day, it's very heavily regulated. You might be knowing that. Excise regulation is pretty heavy, and they just need manual registers. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether you are in a SAP platform or Oracle platform, it ultimately ends up in a manual register. So that's how today's business is driven. And of course, I see that as a huge opportunity. And that's what many of the things which Satish was telling us. Yeah, and just proud to say that Satish and Aditya, they all, and we will have Divya, and I'm not sure where, Philip Varghese is, these are some of the CXOs who are part of an elite community. The elevator pitch is no one has slept in the last 2 years. Okay, so that's a value we have. We have got 172 CXOs with us in our CI ecosystem, and great to have someone like Satish who can really bring in tons of value to this ecosystem. And we would like to carry on this association. I'm here for tomorrow, which I told Aditya, like first half. We have been pretty consistent working with IIM Ahmedabad. This is our 7th year of engagement. Nothing from B and C yet. Okay, so maybe Aditya will take us through, and we'll be more than happy to associate ourselves with that. With that, I say once again, a great thanks to Satish and the birthday boy today. Give him a big hand.
Thank you. Done?
Okay, so yeah, so on behalf of IIM Bangalore, first of all, a lot of thanks to all of you for coming at 6 o'clock, attending this entire session. So thanks to everybody for your presence. Thanks to Satish for this entire wonderful presentation. And thanks to Venkatesh for bringing everybody in. And thanks to Stuti also for organizing this. So thanks to everybody, and thanks all of you for your presence. Thanks a lot.